Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber with Everyone Loves Guitar, and I'm here with the one and only Billy Norris. Billy's a native of Tampa, Florida. He's in Nashville right now, but after cutting his teeth playing blues guitar as a preteen in local bars, he moved up to New York City to attend Manhattan School of Music as a jazz bassist, actually. He spent years orbiting the New York jazz scene with artists such as Bobby Sanabria, Stephon Harris, and the LaBeouf brothers. Did I get that name right? I'm sorry.
LaBeouf. Close enough. Yeah.
The Buff Brothers, and eventually connected with RCA Records artist and Grammy nominee Gavin DeGraw in 2008. That began his touring career, traveling the world not only as Gavin's guitarist, but as his musical director and his background vocalist. Gavin sold over 1 million records, and Billy's still touring and recording with Gavin to this day. In fact, he's in Nashville working on a new album with Gavin right now. Billy's worked as a guitarist, bassist, vocalist, music director, live show designer, producer, and songwriter across the spectrum with artists such as Andy Grammer, Colby Calais, Train, Parachute, The Heydays, and many others. He shared the stage with Billy Joel, over 40 shows with Billy, Shania Twain, over 70 shows, Bon Jovi, Alanis Morissette, Martina McBride, Maroon 5, and countless others performing for tens of thousands at venues ranging from the Garden, Madison Square Garden in New York, to Fenway Park, to Giant Stadium, to Wrigley Field, to Kadena Air Base in Japan, and the Heineken Music Hall in Amsterdam. He's been on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, the Miss Universe pageant, The Ellen Show, Today Show, America's Got Talent, Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve. Oh, we'll talk about that because that's kind of cool. The Voice, the official NFL Super Bowl tailgate party, the NHL Winter Classic, live from Daryl's house, which is also really cool, and many more, both domestically and abroad. His time away from touring is spent producing music for film and television, teaching and writing and recording, and he's going back and forth between New York City, L.A., Nashville, and his home here in St. Petersburg, Florida. Billy, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Man, thanks for having me. You are breaking my podcast cherry. So.
Oh, wow. So I'll be gentle with you.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Man, I didn't. Sorry, Mrs. Norris. So, man, I didn't realize you were on. Let's start with that. Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve. Because
yeah, man.
That was when, like I was a little kid. I used to watch that. What? Obviously,
we did that.
Now.
Yeah, we did it 2 years ago. So that would have been New Year's Eve going into 2017, I believe. Yeah, that was the one. No, actually, it was going into 2016. Yeah, so we were right in the middle of Times Square and did the whole, the stage, and it wasn't the really, really cold New Year's that they had last year, but it was freezing. But it's amazing how much control they have over the people there. It's actually not nearly as chaotic as it looks on TV. It's very controlled. Yeah, very segmented, and as long as you have the magic laminate that lets you go anywhere, there's lanes built in that you can just walk. I mean, you can walk amongst the millions freely and easily. But you get to stand right underneath the ball at the drop, and it's pretty cool.
That's really interesting because I grew up in New York City, and I never went there simply because it's like I always thought I'd never be able to get to the bathroom.
Well, you can't. Yeah, I mean, I assume everybody just pisses their pants out there, but
I would think the same thing.
The thing is, having the opportunity. I think we've done it. We did New Year's Rockin' Eve once, and then we've done a couple like private parties at that Hard Rock on New Year's Eve. And so you're literally right underneath the ball, and having done it like that, where you get to stand right there and watch it, and it's easy, and you can get to the bathroom, and you go inside if you're cold, like all this stuff. That's the way to do it. I can't say that I would have ever thought it was worth it to stand out there and with the masses. Sounds a little bougie of me to say, but man, I would rather watch it on TV, honestly.
No, I totally get it. It's like the Thanksgiving Day parade. We went up there once, 10 years ago, and I think we left. I left in like 20 minutes. It's just too freaking cold.
Yeah, man. Well, the floats are cool, but you can see them better on TV.
Yeah, totally, man. Well, that's awesome that you got to do that. And then I also didn't realize that Daryl's house, because I know I've interviewed a lot of guys who've done that. I obviously know the show. It's great. What was your experience up doing that with?
Man, that was still to this day probably one of the top 3 things in my career that I've ever done as far as just an awesome experience start to finish. Because Daryl was actually still in the original house where they filmed it, which was that house upstate about 2 hours north of the city.
Yeah.
So he sold that, but that was like the 17th century colonial house that he had redone. And so that original, where you see all the old episodes, they're in that room still. So we went there, man, spent the whole day. And it was just, the vibe was so incredible. I mean, the musicians are great. The vibe was warm. And you could tell, like, I watched the show a bunch too. So you can tell sometimes there's the episodes where he's really vibing with somebody. And sometimes there's the episodes where, like, can't wait to get him out the door. And we just had, the second we walked in, man, it was really warm and it just vibed right. So we had a great time. I think we played maybe like 5 or 6 songs. And we actually dug back. The coolest thing was we dug deep into the catalog when Gavin and I were picking songs for that. And, you know, you figure everybody's going to pick Rich Girl and Man Eater and that kind of stuff. So we actually picked this song called Go Solo, which is, oh man, I forget which record it's on. And, what was the other one? I can't remember. But this track, Go Solo, like, if you haven't heard it, check it out. It's really, really great. And so we sent that in, and Daryl was immediately excited that we had, you know, actually picked some stuff that we had spent the time to invest in the catalog a little bit. The other one is called I'm Gonna Love You for a Long Time, I believe. And another just vibey, deep track, album cut. So that brought some life into the room when we got in there and are approaching these songs that he hadn't played them in 30 years, 20 years, whatnot. So that was great. And then the food was awesome, and you sit there and you get drunk, you drink wine at the end, and everybody's just shooting the shit around the table. And just an unforgettable day, truly.
Is there any rehearsing going on there? Or those guys just...
Well, I think they rehearse the day of, before you get in, because you get in around 2:00 in the afternoon. So they run the songs. You send them in advance. I deal with their MD, who's this guy Shane Terrio, who's actually an incredible guitarist out of Nashville New Orleans. Yeah,
he's actually got a podcast.
Does he really?
Yeah,
man, I got to listen to that. He's a bad boy.
I was just referred to him. Actually, I just left him a message like not 24 hours ago to come on this show. That's so
well.
Funny.
When you talk to Shane, tell him I said hello.
I definitely will, Billy.
Yeah, he's a bad boy. Anyway, so I sent him the songs in advance. I think they rehearse, the morning when they get in, and then you come in and you do it live. So basically you kind of run over the arrangement, you play through it once, and you hash out anything that got a little funky, and then you just go for it. And the guy, again, I'm terrible with names sometimes, so I can't remember who actually mixes it, but it's Daryl's front of house guy, who actually does the mixing for the show. And he cleans that stuff up, makes it real warm and pretty. The room sounds great. I mean, he's not fixing stuff, but he's really like he's got a light touch, and he knows how to really sweeten everything up. So yeah, it's one of those things that we're really proud of. And what was cool about it was after the fact, for a couple years, all the commercials that we saw for it usually led with us playing I Don't Want to Be. So I think I was the first thing on the commercial, just my, ba-na-na-na-na, just right on my guitar. I was kind of proud of that.
Yeah, that's cool.
So they obviously had a good time, and they were singing our praises afterwards. So I think they really enjoyed us. They had Billy Gibbons in the day before, so they set the bar pretty high.
Yeah.
But I don't think we messed it up too bad.
That's awesome, man. It's a good experience for you. It sounds like you're
absolutely. Yeah, it was great.
Man, so you grew up here in town in Tampa, and then you moved up to New York City. What prompted that move?
Well, funny enough, I started playing guitar when I was, I think, 8 years old. And I played guitar all through middle school, high school. I had a blues band, the Billy Norris Project. And
that's a good name.
Thank you. It was like, well, the Billy Norris Band or the Billy Norris Collective, or I don't know. It worked. It was the
Billy Norris Project.
It was the BNP, right? So we did BNP gigs all through high school. But I started picking up bass in middle school, actually, because I wanted to be in band, right? You had to pick something that you could play in band. So actually, the band director let me play electric bass in the concert band, which was kind of hilarious. Nice. But then the next year, new band director's like, no, you're not playing electric bass in the wind ensemble. So that's when I started playing upright, upright bass, string bass, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And I really started focusing on bass, got really into the jazz thing. And oddly enough, was like, you know what? I should play bass. I should focus on it because I'd be much more likely to get a job playing bass because everybody plays guitar, right? Yeah. So I'll play bass, and then maybe I'll have more likelihood of getting a job. Followed that all the way through, went to Manhattan School of Music.
Where is that?
That is on the Upper West Side. So it's 122nd and Broadway. And which is originally, the building is the original Juilliard school from like the early 1930s or 1940s or so.
Okay.
So I went up there figuring that New York City was a good place to make it as a jazz player. And at that point, I was pretty convinced that jazz was going to be the thing. And so that was where you went. That was the epicenter of the jazz scene. They talk about New Orleans, but New Orleans isn't really it's got its own thing, but there's not really a jazz scene there. And so the epicenter of the jazz scene was New York. So I'm like, okay, I'll go to New York. And was fortunate enough to get some help to be able to go to Manhattan School of Music, and just assimilated myself into that city, man, and started really focusing on being in New York and trying to be around the people who were doing what I wanted to be doing, which was playing jazz, which is kind of a closed off circle. Once you're in it, you realize it gets very exclusive.
Yeah.
Which is, in and of itself, I think, now already, like, now we talk the real shit. Like, I think that's part of the problem with jazz is that, people who play it, the only people that go see the shows are the ones who play it, that want to be playing the shows. But,
well, if you're playing in places like Smalls,
exactly. You go see people at the Jazz Gallery, and the crowd is 40 guys that want to be playing at the Jazz Gallery. Which is cool, but it's just kind of self-perpetuating thing. Yeah. But I was never really. I don't know. I kept doing other stuff too. I wanted to play jazz. I thought it made sense, and I thought I was just arrogant enough to think that I could make it work. And I started actually working, not a ton, but I was working with a bunch of different smaller acts and some bigger acts, and all in the city. And then I kind of, was branching out and playing in like R&B bands and playing in like a Latin band and just doing whatever I could. But I was playing guitar at that time too, like, because I figured like that was my draw, is that I could also sing and I could play guitar. Okay. So I was getting hired a lot based on that, and that I had a sensibility for more popular music too kind of helped, because in the conservatory environment, a lot of people are pretty much, you could play jazz, you could play classical, and you ask them to, you sit in with a bar band and they don't have a clue. And that's how I cut my teeth. How many thousands of songs did I play growing up that I had no idea what they were until, you just kind of figure it out as you go. So that was an asset to me. And yeah, I think I kind of went off on a tangent there, but New York was the place that I decided would launch me and would introduce me to the right people to help perpetuate a career in music.
New York City, though, is a tough place to be successful at anything. Oh yeah. The competition's fierce, and people are, the work ethic is really intense. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I think there's like a great unifier in that city, in that pretty much everybody's broke, right? I mean, there's a very wide middle ground there, but there's kind of no middle class. Everybody is either filthy, filthy, filthy rich, or everybody feels broke there because it's such an oppressive place to live. But it's also, that can be really good for your creative spirit, because you're kind of, everybody's in it together. Well, everybody on my block, everybody in my building, everybody in this neighborhood is broke too, and we're all trying to make something of ourselves. So there's no pretense there, oddly enough. So nobody's flashy, nobody's trying to show off. Everybody's just kind of got their head down and is trying to grind it out and make something of themselves. But yeah, New York, it's I had my moments where it almost crushed me, and I managed to kind of roll out of the way of the rock and keep going. But yeah, man, that happens. It's a tough place.
There was a middle class like before like 1990 pretty much. Mm-hmm. Prices just started getting so high, and like when I was a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, a guy could work construction and his wife could be a nurse, and they can live somewhere in the city. You can't do that now.
No, I mean, I don't even think you can live within 50 miles of the city and
probably
do that
not.
Now. I mean, and own something, actually have. No, it's impossible. It's impossible, right?
Yeah, the only place you could probably live is the Bronx, which is where I grew up. But that's the only borough that hasn't like gentrified.
That hasn't. Well, I'm sure it's on. I'm sure it's coming.
It's a little bit of it, but not. Still kind of rough.
Yeah, there's still places. Yeah.
So what happened? So you graduated from school. You're hanging out in New York. What was the turning point for you, where like either you connected with Gavin, or what happened?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I was living in New York, and obviously, and really, I was 2.5 years into my degree, and I was on track to finish in 3. And I was really at that point where I was just like, what the hell am I going to do next? What am I doing here? Why am I trying to play music for a living? What on earth, what am I doing? And I started thinking, okay, well, maybe I'll just go back home, or maybe I'll move to LA, maybe I'll move to, I don't know, somewhere else. And I don't know, you have all these crazy ideas that don't make any sense. And you just start chasing them down. And then literally a couple weeks later, a good friend of mine named Jamie Silverstein, who is a bass player, who was touring for a while with Miguel, the R&B singer, and now he's just a really successful producer in LA. He had been playing with Gavin's brother, Joey, who had a band in New York at the time. And he called me and said, hey, I put your name in the hat for this pop gig. I don't know if you'll get a call or not, but I put your name in the hat. And he told me who it was. I was like, wow, that's great. He's like, yeah, you'd be playing guitar. I'm going to audition on bass. I was like, okay, cool. And figuring, wow, that's awesome that he would do that. No chance that I would ever get a phone call. Because especially for someone who actually knew who it was. I had remembered seeing Gavin on the Letterman show on his first record cycle and saying, oh, wow, there's a guy who actually doesn't suck. I'm like, this is nice. A guy playing his instrument and singing and actually, who's kicking ass. So anyway, I got a call literally like 10 minutes later, and it was Gavin's brother, Joey, and he's like, yeah, come down, we want to audition, like, we got a bar downtown, like, come down and, come play some songs. I was like, okay. So at that point, I like went to my closet, like, what am I going to wear? And I picked, whatever, my baggiest Wrangler jeans and my, and some overblown blazer and some printed t-shirt. Like, cool, now I look like rock and roll. And I got my amp on the little cart and my gig bag and got on the subway at 125th Street and headed downtown. And yeah, I walked into the bar and expecting Gavin to be there. He wasn't there, and Joey was there, and Gavin's dad Wayne was there. And we they're like, all right, cool. We'll have you set up here, literally like right in the middle of the bar, like the doors open out to the street. It's immediately after, so just set up here and just play some songs. I was like, what do you mean?
Where is this?
So this is at Houston and Allen, okay. So right down Lower East Side. I'm like, I don't know, play song. What? This is an audition? What am I doing? Am I auditioning? Am I busking? What is it? And so like, oh, well, we'll just take you downstairs. We'll go down. So we went down to the basement of the bar, which had like another venue down there. And I plugged in, they're like, okay, play us something. And I wish I could remember what I played, but I have no idea what I played. And they're like, yeah, cool, great. Like, you want to come on the road? I was like, that easy? I'm like, yeah, okay, great. And then so over the next couple of weeks, I came back to the bar and met Gavin when he got back from European tour and played, kind of sat in a couple times. And it really worked out because it was such a comfortable environment that I was used to, which is playing in bars. And that's a big fundamental and honestly the best, I'll make a blanket statement. I tend to do this sometimes, so I make a lot of generalizations. But the best players that I know, at least in my world, are all the ones that came up and cut their teeth playing at bars. Those are the guys that really are the most adaptable and the most fluid and the less rigid, least rigid.
You mean as opposed to playing in someone's living room on YouTube?
Yeah, or, guys that, there are guys working who came up, listening to records and recreating that and really understanding how this stuff works and really developing, a feel and a groove and they play great, but you put them in a situation where you call a song on stage, and whether it's at a bar or it's in front of 40,000 people, and you call something and they don't know it, they freeze. They're like, well, I don't know the part. Like, what do you mean you don't know the part? There's no part. Just play the song. You know what I mean? And that's so. Anyway, on a tangent. So that's kind of how Gavin and I vibed on that, and he understood that I was the same kind of player because that's how he came up. And so I guess it was a couple months until I did my first show with him in New Orleans, and we were off and running, and that was 10 years ago.
And you guys were rehearsing that whole time for 2 months?
No rehearsing. We came in. I did one rehearsal the day before the show. Sweating bullets, no idea. I had never worn in-ears before. I had never done any of that shit, and I had no idea what to do. I was the green bean, the green bean of all green beans, or the greenhorn. Is that what they call them? Like the deadliest catch, the greenhorn or something? Yeah, something like that. Green, I think is. Yeah, I was green. I was I was green as they come, and I managed to not fuck it up completely, and I'm still here.
Yeah, so, and you're a musical director now, right?
Yeah. So after a few years, it just it happened naturally and Gavin and I just developed this rapport where, sometimes artists, they don't speak the language. They're artists, they're creative. So when they need something articulated in terms that can be actually disseminated to a band or to a producer on a TV show or something, they need an intermediary. And he and I always had such a good rapport that I just kind of naturally fell into that role, which that role kind of blossomed into writing shows for him and, the live show design kind of thing and arranging and all that stuff was very comfortable for me. So that it was just kind of a very natural evolution there.
Did you ever ask him what about, like, cause you were like, okay, what about that, whatever you did down in the basement of that bar floated his brother's boat?
Well, you know what? His brother also plays guitar, and he just had a sense that I was a natural player.
Okay.
And I think whatever it was that I played, he's like, yeah, you can tell when you see a guy and you just know, you can just tell, even if he's only playing rhythm guitar or playing something, you get that sense like, oh yeah, he gets it. He has the thing. And apparently that's what he thought. Also, one of the things that I think really boded well for me was they were asking me which guitarists I like. And I brought up Oz Noy.
Oh, yeah.
And Oz,
he's great.
Oz is another fantastic, just the baddest of bad dudes. And those Israeli guitarists, man, I don't know what's in the water over there, but those guys are eating their Wheaties guitar wise. Anyway, so I brought up Oz, and unbeknownst to me, Oz had actually played with Gavin for a few years, and they were close. And so they're like, oh, and they really liked Oz, but Oz was doing his own thing, kind of on his own career. So that just worked out. It was the right combination of answers. It's like I unlocked I solved the Rubik's Cube without even knowing it.
That's awesome. So, but that's how that stuff happens, man.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I agree with you. It's got to be some universal force behind it because the series of things that has to happen, the likelihood of you mentioning Oz, the likelihood of you playing the right song. Now,
exactly.
Your buddy, the bass player, whatever happened to him? Was he working with his brother still, or you said he's a producer?
Yeah, his brother didn't really keep touring. His brother's main gig is he's a voiceover guy.
Okay.
So unfortunately, Jamie ended up auditioning for the Gavin gig and didn't get it, unfortunately, which sucked. And I felt kind of guilty about that. But he ended up moving out to LA and like I said, working with Miguel and doing mostly just producing now. And, making boatloads of money, I'm sure, and just doing really well for himself, which he certainly deserves because he's a talented guy. But yeah, he was the one, like, I owe it to him. He made the phone call for me. So he's the guy, and he knows that. I've thanked him for that.
That's awesome, man. What a great story. Thank you.
You've
opened up and shared the stage with some pretty major artists, and I was curious if were there any takeaways or things that you learned from the following people? First, Billy Joel.
Oh, man. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Where do I start with Billy Joel? Billy Joel is everything that you want an icon to be. Everything that you hope and you dream that if you idolize someone or someone who's like a really legendary star and you hope that they're just this force of goodness and that they treat their people well and that they are normal and that they aren't jerks. And he's all of those things to the nth, as well as his entire operation of people they've all been with him for decades. They cumulatively are just the kindest, most gregarious bunch of people I've ever encountered professionally, ever, hands down. And what I took away from that was, there's a couple guys in that band in particular. One guy, Mark Rivera, who's the tenor saxophone player, who's also been with Hall & Oates. He's a Foreigner. He's been, plays with Ringo Starr. He's kind of one of these guys who's been in it forever. And it's just, you meet these guys and they literally put their arms around you like, yeah, welcome to the show, kid, and I have genuine, not with Billy, but I have genuine relationships with these people now. I would consider them my friends and true mentors. That's and right. what I took away from that is the importance of really of wrapping your arms around people and as they're coming up, like pulling them up with you. And those guys have nothing to prove. They have everything to, every credit to their name. And just to see all of them be so warm and so deliberate and intentional with their behaviors and their advice and their willingness to just say, hey, like, I was where you were, like, come on up here and hang with us. We're all doing the same thing, you know?
That's
and
really cool.
That was pretty cool. That, I have a lot of love in my heart for those guys, every last one of them. And that it comes from the top down. So that is Billy Joel. That's how he takes care. He runs his operation like a big Italian family, you know, and right down to the meals and catering, which are pretty spectacular.
I would imagine.
Oh yeah.
So have you like given a different look now? You think outlook on when you have younger guys coming up with you now? Do you think that made you a little more empathetic and understanding?
Definitely, absolutely. But I don't think I was lacking that to begin with, because I definitely had some experiences growing up in St. Pete. Because I started playing bars when I was like 13, 14 years old. My dad was taking me around, you know, trying to get into blues jams and stuff. And you could still smoke in bars back then. So I would come home, you know, reeking of cigarettes, and my amp smelled like cigarettes and all this shit. And it was just, but that was the experience, right? And so I had guys in that phase of my life who treated me both ways. So a couple guys who really embraced me. This one guy in particular, Damon Fowler, who's...
Oh, yeah, I know Damon Fowler's. Yeah.
Damon
plays on
Damon
double humbucker telly.
He sure does.
Yeah.
It's that with the P90s.
Yeah. And
that guitar was a birthday gift for him, and I gave him those pickups to put in that guitar.
Really?
Yeah,
I always wondered, because it's like a gold, it looks like a gold top, but it's a telly.
Yep. I'll tell you a story about that guitar a little later.
That's cool.
So Damon was one of these guys who, he's about, I think maybe 5 or 6 years older than I am. Yeah. Actually, no, probably a little more than that. Maybe 10 years.
Like 10, yeah.
Yeah. And so he had been that guy, been that kid in that area. And I remember the very first time I went and saw him and introduced myself, he's like, come on up, man, come play a song with me. And let me, you know, I had no really stage etiquette at that point. So he let me stomp all over him and, you know, play too many notes and play too long of a solo. And he, every time he was in town or would play in town again, this little place called the Ringside Cafe, which unfortunately they knocked down the original one, built a new one, not as vibey. Sad day. Yeah, every time he was there, he would invite me to come play with him, literally once a month. And he was one of those warm guys. But then there were the other guys that, you know, who's this snot-nosed kid on my stage, and made a point of treating me like shit, and made a point of saying, well, like, no, you don't belong here. Get out. You know, whether they were vibed that I was talented or just they were grizzled because they were, you know, they didn't enjoy what they were doing. So that, from an early age, I remembered what that felt like. And I will never, ever, ever do that. And so even when I had my band, the Billy Norris Project, toward the end of high school, there were even a couple I was 18, but there were a couple younger kids, couple 14, 15-year-olds that I would have come sit in with me, you know, and I feel like that it's our job to really pass that torch, like, constantly, and really cool. You have to embrace young musicians, and you also have to realize that, like, you will never be the best. And there will always be people who are going to run circles around you and impress you. And that age shouldn't be a factor in that. So if you have someone coming up who's going to, like, blind you with amazing speed and incredible phrasing and all this stuff, like, yeah, I want to hear that. Like, come on, man. Like, show me what you're doing. Like, I want to learn that. And I think, so to kind of tie it all together, like, getting rid of any kind of pretense is really important. And I hope to keep perpetuating that in my career.
Man, I'm just digging the Billy Norris Project. I think you need to bring that back. And then,
you know what, man? I still have at my parents' house probably like 13 boxes of CDs. So I'll send you a few if you want to start slinging them out.
No, when it comes back out, you come on here and we promote your Billy Norris Project. I love that name, man. The Billy Norris Project. It just sounds like very blues. You know,
it was. That's exactly what it was, man. Yeah.
Maroon 5.
Yeah, okay. Maroon 5 we toured with in 2011, and what I took away from them was that was where I really understood what a great show is supposed to be like. And that was right as they were launching Moves Like Jagger, literally as it was climbing the charts. They had this ballsy move where they opened their show with it. Brand new song, but they were so confident in it that right out of the gate, they opened with it. And they had a guy, an outside musical director named Adam Blackstone, who's MD'd for everybody under the sun, Justin Timberlake, let's see who else. I'm drawing a blank, but all these big Mary J. Blige, big pop stars, big R&B stars. He's the guy they go to write them a show, and I will never forget the impact of like the first 3 songs of their show, and just how they all segued from one to another. And those guys just went out and just dominated. And I was like, okay, yep, stealing that. And then that was kind of the point at which I took what they were doing and applied it to Gavin's music, which is different, similar in ways, but different, as Maroon has kind of gone more pop and more rhythmic. But at that point, I was just so taken by what they were doing. Like, those guys are awesome. Also, I think James is one of the most underrated and one of the best guitarists out there, especially functioning in a band. He's got such incredible pocket. Like, what a great right hand. I love his playing. And a couple times we sat in the back of the bus, he and I, and just kind of played and traded notes and traded inspirations and stuff, and endless respect for him as well.
He's a really, really sweet guy and a
sweet person. Yeah.
Very deep guy, man.
Very, yeah.
Very deliberate in things he does.
That's important. Yeah, I believe in that a lot.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So Maroon, yeah, I will never forget the show that they played on that tour. That was quite the spectacle.
It's good that you're smart enough to, like, a lot of times, coming out of the business world, I've interacted with a lot of people where they'll say, "Oh, I can't use this idea. I sell this, and that guy's in real estate." But that would be like, but you could have said, "Oh, I can't do that idea because we play different music." But a good idea is a good idea. You could apply it.
Oh man, a good idea is always a good idea. Yeah. And when you talk about, so I talk about guitars in general. So guitarists, or how does a guitarist? I get students who ask me, how do you find your own sound, right? And the first thing you do is you imitate, right? Mm. So you take what you like from whatever source is and you imitate it. So for me, it was Stevie Ray Vaughan. And so I did that, and I imitated Stevie Ray Vaughan. I never put 13s on my guitar and tuned it down a half step, but I had the super reverb and I dined it out, and I had the Fat Strat with the Texas Specials in it, and did that whole thing, and I imitated. And then it was Robin Ford, and then it was, Scott Henderson a little bit, and like some of these other guys. And then, so the next stage past the imitation is the assimilation, right? Where you take those things and you push it all together. And then that kind of becomes your palette. And then the nature of that assimilation is you kind of lose some things in translation and it becomes your own. And eventually that just kind of, it's like stewing a tomato sauce for a long time, right? And it changes. It doesn't taste the same as it does, at the beginning as it does 3 hours later. So for me, that was, when you're taking ideas from people, I'm still in the assimilation phase. I'm not in the imitation phase anymore, but you're kind of always there. You're always pulling things and making them your own. And I think that's important. And whether that's in the business world or that's music or whatnot, you got to acknowledge the fact that there are tons of people out there doing way more creative things than you are. And so should you be intimidated by that, or should you try and learn from it and try and use it?
Okay, Bon Jovi.
Oh.
That must have been
okay. You want to hear? Okay, so we opened for Bon Jovi right when they opened New Midland Stadium.
Okay.
Opened for him in front of a stadium with 75,000 people. That's his home turf, right?
Yes.
And he, as soon as we got out there, the sky opened up, and it was like a severe thunderstorm to where they were ringing warnings out, like broadcasting warnings to the people in the stadium saying, go, like, leave your seats and go undercover. Meanwhile, we're still out there playing in the pouring ass rain, and just completely getting dumped on. One of the most torrential downpours I've ever seen. And not to mention thunder and lightning, kind of fearing for our lives, but saying, well, I guess we got to keep going. And what they had said, I remember this so well, he had this big catwalk, Bon Jovi did, that went halfway out into the stadium, and said to Gavin, we were squeezed on stage in front of there, and his production manager said to Gavin, whatever you do, don't go on the fucking catwalk. And so, of course, as we're out there, we're out there risking life and limb in this moment. And Gavin looks at me, And he just gets up off the piano and takes the mic and just right out onto the catwalk and does the whole walk around the whole thing. And of course, there's barely anybody out there at that point anyway. But that was kind of his little moment to take his. And then we got off stage. And of course, as soon as we get off stage, the sky clears and the sun parts the clouds. And we go off stage, and John Bon Jovi walks around the corner. He's like, "Oh, nice weather today, huh?" And it just disappears back off into the fog. And so not a real experience with him, but you definitely get, when you're opening for people, you get rules. You definitely have, and they're there for a reason. But Gavin wasn't going to play by that one that day. He was going to, he's going to take that catwalk.
Good for him, man.
Yeah, man. Why not?
What the hell?
Well, and in that situation, we're like, why can we not? Because I'm trying to remember exactly how it went down, but our tour manager was like, well, we want to pull these guys off stage and let's wait. And they're like, no, show's got to stay on time. And so we played our 40 minutes in the severe thunderstorm. And I mean, I could have gone, I was in a pile of water, 2 inches deep by the end of it. The stage wasn't draining. I mean, wired microphones. That's not a good look.
No,
but,
not at all, man.
But I remember it well. It's just another one for the storybook.
Was that the biggest crowd of people you played in front of? 75,000 people?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, don't you mean like 7,500 or 775 people by the time we did it? I've never seen people get out of the way so fast. I mean, mass exodus. But yeah, that was a big one. I think still to this day, that's probably the most, at least the biggest crowd that we were supposed to play in front of.
Sure.
Yeah.
And now you're working on a new album with Gavin?
We are, yeah. We're in the infancy stages right now, and I can't say a whole lot about it, but we're just now in the process of demoing a bunch of songs, and we're doing that from the comforts of his home in Nashville, and really just taking the creative process nice and slow and keeping control over it, and not letting it get colored by anything. Anyone, anything, anything other than making the record that he wants to make the way he wants to make it.
So you grew up in St. Pete. What was your childhood like?
My childhood was very colorful. I'm an only child, and my dad was in the restaurant business, and my mom worked in the catering business, and then kind of hopped around a couple things, and then ended up just being a stay-at-home mom because I needed a full-time handler and chauffeur and essentially manager because I had so much going on. I was playing in a band. I had a radio show on Radio Disney, like a public service radio show.
Right. Well, how did that come about? That's wild.
Man. I had been writing, but actually what came about before that was I wrote for the St. Pete Times, now the Tampa Bay Times, now the whatever, wherever it's going, as a film critic. I was a teen film critic, kids film critic. From the time I was 10 years old, they had this team of kid reporters that they called the X team. They used to put out they called it the Express section every Monday morning or every Monday. And they have a team every year. They'd kind of cast a team of reporters and have kids like write stories and whatnot. It was pretty cool.
That is really
cool. I did like a trip report, went to Kennedy Space Center, wrote about that. And you go in there and do like ice cream taste tests and these kind of, kids' interest stories. And then they had film critics before that, and they wanted to offer it to me. And so I tried it out, and it worked out great. And so I was doing that when I was 14, like that. Because I was doing that, I ended up as a guest on the Letterman show, and which was nuts.
That is so cool.
And my editor at the Times was Gretchen Letterman, who's David's sister. But I had heard from Leno. They had reached out and hey, we heard of you, kid film critic, maybe have a public interest story or human interest story, whatever. And it got kind of tied up and slowed down. I told Gretchen about it, and she's like, I feel like just due diligence, I should probably let my brother know.
Get my brother on
and
this, yeah.
And then literally 3 days later, I flew to New York and did the Late Show, and so that was a thing. And I kept doing that all through high school, which kind of I always wanted to be a musician, but there was definitely that should I go into journalism, which the state of journalism now. I mean, I probably made the right decision. I don't know. It's
the
certainly
state of journalism is even worse than the state of music.
I know, right? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And so, that was up until really I made my decision for college. Like it was still on the table because I was a good writer, and so I just translated that into writing songs instead. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. You're you're a very good communicator. You're clearly, you're thoughtful.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. And obviously you were always like that because those skills that you have, that make you the way you are today, made you successful back then doing that stuff as a kid. Where did that come from?
Well, I would credit my mother with a lot of that. She's very good linguistically. She's got very strong language skills. She's a great writer. And I remember even when I was writing those movie reviews as a kid, she would edit them for me. So she'd edit for grammar and punctuation and flow and these kind of things. And she's never worked in that field, so I don't really know where she got it from. But I do know that her father, who was from Tunisia, spoke 7, 8, 9 different languages.
Wow.
So
cool.
and her mother was Swiss and French. So she grew up around a lot of language. So yeah. I think that maybe you can extrapolate out that maybe that in a roundabout way, she was a really excellent communicator. Not like my dad's not, but she was noticeably helpful with that. So I think, I don't know, I've always been a people person too, and she's very much a people person. And so I'm not afraid of people. I think a lot of people are afraid to talk to people or to ask questions or to, obviously you have a podcast, so you're a communicator as well. But, I spend my whole life now, at airports, on planes, sitting at hotel bars, and the most enriching conversations I've ever had have been random conversations with strangers at those places where you run into people from all walks of life. And truthfully, you don't know if they're full of shit or not. They could just be spinning you some narrative, but that's kind of the fun of it. You just, you cross these paths and you have these conversations and you learn from people. And I feel like that's an important part of life is knowing how to communicate and not being afraid to do so. Yeah.
Well, you do it really well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And all
right, so now we do the rest of the interview in Latin. How's that sound?
If I could speak, I could barely speak English, Billy. You're pushing me here. But what's interesting is that those little moments that you do have with kind of like random strangers, I don't know why. I call it insular intimacy. It's like the plane thing. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to talk to those people. And like I find often those conversations tend to be really like vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Because it's like, there's, this guy doesn't, or this lady, they don't know you, you don't know them. And it's like free therapy almost.
Dude, 1,000%. You're totally in the vacuum. And I've surprised myself with the shit that I'll tell a stranger. We're like, oh my God, did I really just share that about what's happening in my life right now? But there is that insular thing, like you really are insulated. You very well will never see this person again. And sometimes you'll trade, you'll trade phone numbers and never ever speak to them again. But, I remember, and you have cool conversations. So I was reading a book on the Skunk Works, which is that the program, Lockheed Martin's program, where they developed the stealth planes and the SR-71, like back in the day. I really like aviation. It's kind of another side passion of mine. And I it was like a very secretive program, and I sat it on the empty middle seat on a flight one day going up to DC, and a guy sat down next to me, big tall guy, looked at the book. He's like, tapped me on my shoulder. And I was like, oh no. Cause always the tap on the shoulder on the plane is like, pull your headphone off. You're like, yeah. He's like, reading about the Skunk Works, huh? I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I used to fly U-2 spy planes. And, in the Cold War. And so off come the headphones. And then the next 2 hours were a conversation about him telling me stuff that he could tell me, not telling me the stuff that's still classified. But, these amazing moments where you just, two human beings in the same place that just happen to intersect and share some kind of a common ground. Mm. And sometimes you have conversations with people with no common ground, which is interesting. I remember talking to a guy who was literally on the way back from Thailand where he had just selected his bride.
Wow.
He was 70 years old. His wife had passed away, so he flew to Thailand and selected his new wife. And I say selected, I mean selected,
sure.
from a catalog where you select a mate. And I was just kind of astonishing, no judgment. I'm just talking to him like, well, how does that work? And he was happy about it. He was thrilled. Yeah. So, the people, and again, like what would inspire him to share that with a stranger, except that he felt comfortable to do so in the moment. And I was asking questions because I wanted to know.
It's interesting. It's like not something you're going to hear about every day. So
That's for sure.
I would ask questions. I would have been the same way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Wow. That's a big
Interesting,
thing.
huh?
Yeah, that is. I give a guy like that credit because he's probably got all sorts of shit going through his head.
I can't even imagine, man.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine. Yeah.
So your dad worked in restaurant biz, and your mom was in catering. Then she was a stay-at-home mom with you. Okay, cool. How did the whole guitar thing start for you?
Dad gave me a guitar when I was, I think, 8. Actually, my uncle gave me a guitar first, and when I was maybe 7 or something, and I don't know what happened to it, lost it or something, and then my dad gave me his. It was a 67 SG Special.
Wow, do you still have that guitar?
I wish I still had it. As we were trying to get me ready to have a band, and we needed stuff, so we needed a PA, and I think I needed an amp. I actually think what we may have done, I'm pretty sure he sold it on eBay, and it was beat to shit. I mean, it was completely, It was like the red wine SG with the tremolo and everything. It was a very cool guitar, but it was beat to shit, like all dinged up and just a mess. But I do wish I had it now because I had no idea what it was at that point, but I wish I had it. But I think he sold it on eBay, and then we bought like a 67 Super Reverb instead.
That's cool.
So we traded one piece of vintage gear for another piece of vintage gear.
You know what?
But
I've been playing my SG lately. I really love it, man.
I don't even own one anymore, but they're really the long scale is pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's a thin neck. This one was designed after, it's like a 2014 or 12 or I think 11, but it was designed after a 61, so it's a really thin neck, and I'm not a big guy. My hands are average size, and I just love it's so easy to play. It feels great. Really enjoy it.
Shit, now I got to go. Now I need to go play one.
But you're in Nashville. You won't have any problem finding one. Don't worry.
I'll have a problem finding one that I can afford. That's for sure.
Yeah, that you might.
Yeah.
So once you started playing, were you hooked right away? It seems pretty much.
I think the answer must be yes, but it was never consciously hooked. I just kept doing it. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I was rabidly like, oh, guitar. I never was one of those kids that like locked myself in my bedroom and played guitar for 10 hours a day, but I just can remember playing all the time. And I started taking lessons, I think when I was about 10, a guy named Dave Erasmo in Tampa, who I think he runs, I don't want to call it the wrong thing, but I think it's called the Tampa Guitar School.
Okay.
I have to check on that. But he was a great teacher, and what I really liked, because I had already spent a couple years playing and kind of figuring things out on my own at that point, what I learned from him and what I've actually carried through to teach my students now is not trying to reinvent the wheel. So he acknowledged that I had already learned kind of how to play the instrument, and he was like, well, I'm not going to try and teach you that your hand position is wrong and teach you and start from scratch and teach you how to hold it and teach you everything you're doing wrong, but I'm going to take what you have and we're going to work with that, and we're going to make that work for you and make you better in that. And so when I teach, I've never taught a beginner because I don't know how to start a beginner. Literally, I do not know where to start someone. How do you play guitar? I don't know. Start on YouTube or get a teacher who teaches beginners. But to get you from that next stage where you can kind of play the instrument and then do something with it, I think that's really important. And I think that's what happens with kids too when they take like piano lessons, and why they end up hating it so much is because they the teacher spends all the time saying, well, that's wrong. You have to do it this way or it doesn't work. Well, guess what? You don't have to do anything anyway.
Yeah,
you can do, it's like I'm learning golf right now. And so I'm in that struggle of golf being the hardest fucking thing I've ever tried to do ever. But also in that place where it's like, well, this is technically correct, but this actually works for me. So am I really doing myself that much of a disservice? I'm not going pro. So if this thing works for me, but it's not technically correct, is that okay? I think yes. I think the answer is yes, as long as you're not hurting yourself.
Man, let me tell you the very weirdest thing. I mean, this is really bizarre. When you said to me, I'm not the kind of person, and my teacher wasn't the kind of person that, makes someone start all over from scratch. I have no idea why, but I thought to myself, oh yeah, like golf.
Exactly.
That is so weird, man.
Well, it's funny because I took some golf lessons, and I actually I enjoyed them. But again, it's from a guy who's like a PGA professional. So he's like, well, no, this is how you must do that. But you look at guys what's his name, Bubba Watson. Like, his swing sucks, but it works.
Yeah.
You know, it sucks by traditional standards, but who cares? You know, he's playing great golf, and so I think there's a parallel there. You have to do what works for you, and to an extent, you know, if it works, then part of it has got to be correct, right? I guess.
Well, also, we do these things for fun.
Yeah, man.
You didn't go to the guy and say, listen, you know, I need to be in the PGA within the next 18 months.
Yeah.
You know, you're just like having fun, man. You want to just learn how to do it within the fun boundaries.
I just want to enjoy myself.
Yeah.
That's all. That's all. I just want to be able to go out there and drink beer and hit the ball like relatively straight. That's all I really want, you know, and not embarrass myself. And I think for a lot of people playing guitar, they want to be able to play guitar and not embarrass themselves. And like, cool, if I have an acoustic guitar sitting around at a party and I want to play Wonderwall, I want to be able to play Wonderwall and not embarrass myself, you know? And I think that's important too. And I think as a teacher, it's interesting because I never considered myself a good teacher until you start teaching multiple people and you realize that you've kind of codified an actual method and you actually have things to share that can help people. And I think that's really important is encouraging people to do what works for them and figuring out how to cultivate that. So for players listening too, just don't be intimidated by what the rules say you're supposed to do. Like if you want to not tuck your thumb back behind the you know, directly underneath your middle finger when you're playing a bar chord, like, I don't care. You want to wrap it around the fingerboard and then figure out how to make it work. I mean, dude, Jeff Healey played with the guitar laid down on his lap. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you would never tell. You'd never be able to know. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Now I'm soapboxing for you.
There you go. No, it's all good, man. I agree with you. I'm not a big guy on rules at all. Believe me.
Nah, overrated.
So speaking of guitars, what's your go-to guitar right now, and maybe what other two guitars would round out your top three?
Okay, excellent question. My top guitar. Well, I'm playing a ton of acoustic these days. Which is funny because growing up, I like never wanted to play acoustic, and now I love playing rhythm guitar so much that I just, you know, it's just a great joy. But I'm going to lump my top guitars into two acoustics and an electric from Collings in Austin, Texas. One of them, so Collings guitars, Bill Collings, who created them, unfortunately passed away last year, and they make the most fabulous, fundamentally sound, beautiful instruments with character and great engineering and great people at Collings and with amazing customer service, and they treat me like a king, and I'm very thankful for them. I have a dreadnought from them. They call it D2A. It's a dreadnought with Adirondack top and I believe rosewood sides, and it records beautifully. It sounds incredible with a pickup in it. I mean, it's just a perfect guitar. I also have an OM from there. So like a Martin style OM guitar, a little smaller body, which works well in a full band setting with Gavin because there's not as much low end in it. And so that's their OM2H, the German spruce top. And then I have a semi-hollow electric from them that's a 335 style guitar. They call their I-35. Yep. And I think James Valentine actually has one of those as well. And I believe Zach Brown plays one. And it's a smaller bodied 335.
Like
along the lines,
kind of
a little bigger than a 339,
okay.
But yeah, same idea. So it's got a little more growl to it, and it's not the low end doesn't build up as much. But again, it's just it plays like melted butter, and it stays in tune through thick and thin. It never fails me, knock on wood. And awesome. I love. I mean, those would honestly that would be my top three. But for the sake of expanding a little bit, I have a gold top Les Paul Deluxe that is probably about 20 years old that I bought off of Craigslist from a guy who owns a tattoo shop who didn't know what he had. And I can't remember if it was like $800 or $900, but it was $800 or $900.
Wow.
And I've broken the headstock on it 3 times and had it repaired. Shout out, by the way, there's a guy named Dave Petillo, Petillo, who is a luthier and woodworker in New Jersey, and His father was a master woodworker, and he has carried on his craft and is the guru of all gurus. He takes care of Bruce Springsteen's stuff. He takes care of Billy Joel's band and their stuff. And he is the guy, if you have a problem with a guitar and no one else can fix it, you send it to him, and he is a master. He is a magician. I have endless gratitude and thanks for the ways he is. And you send him a guitar, he'll like polish the frets, like micro polish all of them, and fix all the like little paint spill over where the factory oversprayed. And it's the guy he's a guru, and he's the man. So Dave, if you listen to this, thank you. You're awesome.
Awesome. Do you know a guy in town named, do you know Eddie Robinson?
I do not, no.
He plays Collings too. They endorse, he endorses, they're one of his sponsors, and
yeah, man,
he plays the I-35. He loves it.
They're a great company. Oh, you know what? So the third guitar, we'll call the third guitar, which is really the fifth guitar I've talked about now.
Yeah.
So this kind of ties into the story about Damon Fowler and that Telly.
Yeah. I wanted to hear that.
So our friend Steve White, who owns an auto body shop, and he does body work and detailing. Not detailing. I mean, it's more in depth than that. I mean, it's like a hot rod shop essentially. He builds guitars for fun, and he was one of those guys who was always a big supporter and a big fan of mine growing up. And I just saw him recently, actually, and he is. When I got the gig with Gavin, he's like, "I want to build you a guitar," and so he built me this Telly with this like really wicked blue flame paint job. That changes color because he's a paint guy, like auto paint is his thing. And so this gorgeous paint job where it's like blue in some light, purple in some light, green in some light, which is not really my thing. I'm very like traditionalist with guitars, but it's just, when we got it, we've gone through like 3 or 4 sets of pickups, and I had a preamp in there initially where I could jack it up and make it super dirty. And over the course of 10 years now, it has settled in and become just a really, really great guitar. It's a really, really excellent Telly. And, it's funny because you know that sometimes when you get these new guitars off the shelf, they take time for the wood to really dry out. And that's what really happened. And it's just a great guitar. I love it to death. It's a rosewood fingerboard, so it's not super, super bright. But I have actually, another takeaway. See, look, I'm tying all this shit together. This is great. Back to the,
you go, man.
So back to James Valentine. So another takeaway from Maroon 5 is how great Telecasters sound in pop music.
Yeah, that's his number one, I'm pretty sure.
That's his thing, yeah. So he's got 60s Tellys. Yeah. 60s or maybe 70s Tellys. So I went looking for...
now he plays the Ernie Balls.
Oh, right. He's got his signature stuff now, right? Yeah.
That's all he plays pretty much.
Yeah. I haven't played them, and I don't think I've even heard them yet. But I do remember his Tellys, and I remember going on the hunt for the perfect maple fretboard Telly, and I found one at Rudy's in Soho, up in Manhattan. I guess so. I have a 72 blonde Telly that has been my labor of love. It's taken a lot of work to get it in touring shape, and full refret and new pickups and all kind of stuff. But the mojo in that guitar. All right, so I answered your 3 guitar question with like 8 guitars now, so we better move on, right?
It's all good, bro. Is there any players who influence your playing that people might be surprised to hear?
Surprised? Probably not.
Okay. It's all the usual suspects.
It's the usual suspects, but I mean, I really say Robin Ford, like number one.
Interesting.
Robin Ford is the number one. And maybe that is surprising because a lot of people don't mention him. But for me, the biggest thing that sets a guitarist apart is phrasing. And if you don't understand, I don't mean you, but for listeners, if you don't understand per se what I mean by that, it's beyond just notes and rhythm. It's the inflection and the way you group your notes together and the way you play. It's the way you speak.
The way you
speak in phrases.
Man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, exactly. And his phrasing to me is just second to none. So Robin Ford is my absolute hands down favorite. I've really started taking influence, and actually this is kind of in the imitation phase still because some of his stuff is so nuts that I just had to literally learn it. There's a young guy named Nir Felder.
Yeah, I know Nir. He's from New York.
Yeah, he's a New York guy. And Nir is really doing some kind of scary stuff too. So I would say that's an influence. And but yeah, Robin Ford, man, all day long.
I got both Robin and Near coming on the show inside next 30 days, the two of them. So I'll make
That's awesome.
I'll tell them both.
Yeah, tell them and tell Robin that I love him and thank you and yeah.
I love you and thank you.
I love you, thank you. Yeah. Near and I just hung out in New York and had yakitori not that long ago.
Oh, did you really?
And just nerded out for a few hours talking all kinds of guitar stuff. So
yeah,
he's
he
a
was
good
really
guy.
cool. I'm looking forward to talking with him, man.
Yeah.
Musically, if I asked you to pick your top 3 Desert Island discs in no particular order and knowing that they could change tomorrow, what's your knee-jerk reaction for this very moment?
First one would be From the Cradle, Eric Clapton, which was that bluesy. It was straight up blues record that he made in the early '90s. That was a very formative record for me. I can remember dancing around my living room on my mom's toes listening to that record.
That's way back.
Yeah, and still love that record. Still think it sounds beautiful. The band is awesome. He plays his ass off. I could listen to that all the time. And they're all, it's all blues. It's all simple stuff, but he's just crushing it. Maybe Stevie Wonder songs in the Key of Life. Maybe that's a tough one.
It's pretty popular. I've heard that as an answer several times.
It's just a beautiful record. It's just a perfect record. It's a deep record. There's a lot of tracks on it too, so you got plenty to listen to. Stevie, for me, vocally is a big inspiration. Third one, I'll throw a curveball here. I think John Mayer Continuum, actually. I have, John Mayer is a hotly contested subject.
He is.
But I happen to think that record in particular is as close to a masterpiece, a modern masterpiece, as one can create. Tonally, songwriting wise, playing wise, I think it's absolutely beautiful. And every time I come across it and listen to it again, I am once again taken by it. So good. I think that would be in there.
Yeah, man, you don't have to justify anything. You like it, it's good.
No, I like it. I like it, man. Yeah, and that's a big thing. People get hung up to that whole endless debate of can you separate an artist from their art, right? Can you, if you don't like who someone is or what they stand for, can you still can you still eat at Chick-fil-A if you don't, if you don't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if you're not a worshiper of, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm always, I have no problem with that. I really don't care. I don't care what you stand for. I don't care what you are. Your private life is your private life, your personal life. And even they make their private lives personal sometimes, but I just don't care.
Yeah.
I like what you created. I don't have to like you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So I like the New York in you, man. You've assimilated. You've become one of us.
Yeah, man. You could take the boy out of New York, but you can't take the New York out of the boy, right?
Do you know John Harrington?
I know of John Harrington. I remember hearing John with Steely Dan,
right?
Probably 7-8 years ago, and being completely floored at his playing. Because he's got that Robin Ford kind of approach as well. Similar tone and similar approach, but really fluid player. Like, never met him though.
Yeah, I had a conversation with him, like, I think today probably. We were talking about that New York sort of directness, or just like, the optimal, I don't really give a fuck.
Yeah, I mean,
how you
who has time? Who has time to give a fuck? Honestly, to worry about other shit.
I'm with you, man.
And that's why, honestly, one of the reasons, again, here comes another generalization, like why I never went to LA, is that it's such a polarized mindset out there from what I'm accustomed to, and that directness is a little absent out there, in my opinion. Yeah. Which is what's interesting about Nashville now, is Nashville has become an assimilation of New York and LA all in one.
Yeah, you still have this. It's funny because I'll talk to some people, and I know they're being very Southern with me in a good way, but I know they don't want to. Like, they'll answer a question like, "Hey, does this work for you?" Yeah, that might be the best thing. Like, yes or no?
Yes or no, man. Don't waste my time. Yeah.
Well, and I know they're being, but it's just a different way of communication.
Absolutely, yeah.
I understand it. I get it. But yeah, I'm with you on that. So tell me, you've been at this a long time, and you're a young guy, but you've been at this more than 50% of your life, almost 2/3 of your life, man. What's something you've learned about yourself throughout this whole journey you've been on musically, career-wise?
Wow, that's a heavy question.
It is.
What have I learned about myself? You know what? almost more the more than learning from the music itself has been the learning from the living the music, which is the living on a tour bus and being away from home so much and trying to establish consistent values and morals when your surroundings are changing every day. And I think what I've really taken away is the importance of being deliberate with yourself and with the people in your life and making sure that you are clear about who you are and clear about what your boundaries are and clear about, what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, and mainly just being confident in your personality and confident in yourself. And a lot of people who haven't succeeded, who I've seen, who have been friends of mine who haven't succeeded in this world, have been because they weren't confident and they got chewed up and spit out because they were too malleable. Now there's a fine line that you have to be able to. The second part of this is you have to be willing to adapt and willing to change things that need to be changed. Yeah. And as you get older, I started this when I was really young, and I'm still really young by a lot of measures.
You're still really young for sure.
But I've spent a lot of my formative years doing this, and so even as I've gotten older, my value system has changed, and things that are important to you change. But really, it's that life stuff. So yeah, like living in music, like what have I taken away from music? Like yeah, it's a lot of fun and there's a lot of inspiration out there. But really, it's about how to continue to be a human and how to remember that life exists outside of music, and that you have to really keep functioning as a member of society. It's easy. It's easy, man. You get on the road and you just forget about everything. You don't have to pay attention to what day it is. You don't have to watch the news. You just do your show, have your cocktails, go out to eat. That's the life. But that'll sell you short after a while. So for me, it's really about just being an intentional person. I don't want to sound all hippy dippy and shit, but really, that's I believe in that.
No, man, that sounds really good. I give you a lot of credit. And
I've learned that the hard way too. I've made mistakes that have forced me to relearn that lesson.
Well, the simple fact that being older, one of the things that I talk to a lot of people that are my age group about is they all struggle with boundaries because they've always accommodated other people, which is nice to do, but not at your own expense.
Right, exactly.
And I think the fact that that's not an issue of mine. Believe me, I got other issues that fuck me up, but boundaries has never been an issue of mine. And I'm really grateful for that, because
absolutely.
I think you're taking away, because the people I see who are like that, they really feel like they gave up a lot of themselves unfair. They weren't fair to themselves.
Well, I agree with that. There's two tenets that I kind of live by that seem like a little bit contradictory, but one is to never be afraid to say no and really learn the power of saying no and not be afraid of that, not to fear that moment where you can disappoint someone or you can, that's boundaries right there. But also the other side of that is the value of saying yes and figuring it out later. And that's, sometimes as you're navigating opportunities, right, that it can be really important if you get an opportunity and your first instinct is, shit, I don't really know if I can pull that off. You have to be able to do that quick evaluation and say, okay, do you think you could maybe do it? Then say yes, keep the door open, and then figure it out. Absolutely. And that's led to some successes for me as well, where you can just kind of, I'm just going to jump in the pool with both feet and into the deep end. Here we go. Yeah. And we'll see what happens.
What's the worst that could happen?
Right, you fail. Yeah, right. Which everybody, that's the worst that can happen.
Right. Next, that'd just be another one. Another
exactly.
Lesson. Good for you.
Yeah. Man. Thanks, man. I'm trying. It's easy to say all this stuff, and then you look at your life, and you're like, well, I haven't always exactly,
No, but it's a work in progress.
It
Everybody
sure is.
Yeah. There's never any no one's evolved, quote unquote. We're all just fucking trying to do the best we can any given day.
That's for sure, man.
That we're around,
That is for sure.
Tell me something about yourself, Billy. People would either be surprised to hear or might find a little odd.
I can clap with one hand.
Yeah, man. Show me that.
All right,
right here. Oh, yeah. His hands.
Yeah, I have a weird, open joint.
It's
thing
like
with my
Gumby.
hand. Yeah. I guess maybe something a little more serious. I feel like I will come back in a second life as a restaurateur, or I will work. I'll open a restaurant. I will work in the kitchen. I hate to call myself a chef because I think that's a disservice to people who are actually chefs. But I am a very avid amateur cook, and either that or I will come back as a sommelier, because I've got a real wine passion, and I inherited that from my father, and not in a wino kind of way, and like that was his path as well.
Yeah.
So there's this side of me that's very interested in that other thing.
Cool, man.
As well. Yeah.
Speaking of your dad, what's the most important thing he taught you?
The most important thing my dad taught me is how to manage your emotions and how to put your head down and plow through things. And
wow, that is a fucking really valuable skill.
That's a valuable lesson. And I've learned that through my own successes and failures, and he learned that through his own successes and failures. But just to be able to, when shit gets tough, to think, well, what is that? Who said it? Was it Winston Churchill said that if you're going through hell, keep going?
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
So yeah, just put your head down and grind it out. And if you, the importance of not wallowing and not panicking and saying, oh God, everything's wrong and everything's fucked up. Like, what do I do? Just like, well, just keep going. Like, you have to keep moving. And so I took that away from him. And my parents are still around and still together and still, so, I'm still learning from them.
So you folks must be married a long time.
Yeah, I think they were married in 1984. So
34 years.
Yeah, almost 35.
That's a long
yeah.
time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Thick and thin.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Norris, congratulations.
They're awesome people.
Props to you, man. You did a great job with Billy. Most important thing your mom taught you?
My mom taught me the importance of faith, and whether that's faith, spiritual faith, religious faith, faith in yourself. She's a very faithful, religiously speaking, spiritually speaking person. And I took that away from her. She's always leaned on that. And some people say, it's just a coping mechanism. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it being a coping mechanism. I think it's an important coping mechanism.
Better than cocaine, I can tell you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a coping mechanism, too.
And she really believes deeply in that. She shares that with people and isn't afraid of that either. So I learned that from her.
Man, it's funny. The other day I just read something that was similar to that. It said, worry and fear and worry are not your friends. Faith is your friend.
Yeah, that's the truth. I believe that.
That was really...
I believe, and I also think, the religion has fallen deathly out of fashion, but faith and religion are not mutually exclusive. I think that faith can exist in and of itself, and it's important to have faith in something and to believe in something, whatever that may be. I'm certainly not trying to get preachy here. But I think it's important to have some kind of a higher value set. If you have faith in that and have faith in kind of what I was saying about like your tenets, your beliefs and being deliberate about who you are, like that's really important. You got to have something that you like abide by, I think, anyway.
Yeah.
Even if you fail, like some kind of scale to measure it by. So you're just not out there, fucking hookers and snorting cocaine.
That's it. No, but that's interesting because, that brings up the subject. Can you have that sort of like, that's interesting. It just made me think of something like, can you have is there too much pressure if you have a moral compass that's only on your shoulders versus having something else that sort of supports or, guidelines for that? I don't know the answer to
I don't know if it's too much pressure. I just don't know if I guess it's possible to just have your own moral compass, but I think it's helpful to have something to measure it by.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. I'll have to have a drink and talk to my wife about that.
There you go. There you go.
What's your biggest business or personal win, Billy?
Biggest business or personal win?
So far.
I think, truthfully, I think the biggest business win was getting hired by Gavin DeGraw. And because it has literally been the ticket, the golden ticket for entry into the music world. It's such a closed off society. Somebody has to you're like a vampire, right? Somebody has to invite you in before you're allowed in. And so I got my invitation and I've managed to stay in so far. But it's amazing. You think about it, like, even when I talk, we're like, okay, well, we need to hire such and such. We need to hire a guy to do this. Like, all right, well, who do you know? And the only people you know are the guys who are already in the business. Like, this guy already has a gig, and this guy's already doing something. And I realize that we perpetuated ourselves by not giving people a chance. But it's hard, you know. You have to maintain quality, and you have to, but you also have to be willing to pull people up and give them an opportunity. So my biggest triumph, in and of the fact that it has facilitated all my subsequent triumphs, was getting hired and staying hired.
And if you're comfortable with this one, if not, tell me cool biggest business or personal disaster.
Oh boy, let's see. Biggest business or personal disaster. I wouldn't say it's a disaster, but there's been a few times where we've let people go, you know, for one reason or another, and I'm really not proud of the way that I handled it personally, and didn't give them the explanation that they deserved, or B, the chance to make it right, or C, a heads up that it was coming, and maybe coaching them through it more. And so I think my failures have been failures of leadership and failures in which I didn't know how to be a good steward of my, I don't want to say my employees, I'll say my colleagues. Because as a musical director, that's kind of, it's my team, right? It's my team that I put together. And so my failures, the things that I regret, are the times where I didn't do that right. And I still hold a few of those in particular, and not like there's been an endless revolving door of them, but let's say two in particular that I don't feel good about, you know.
Well, man, I have a ton of respect for you for owning that.
Hey, man, I mean, you know, it happened, and I try to make it right after the fact, but still, you can't undo what you did.
No, right? But I'll tell you what, at 30, if you've had a couple of phases of leadership, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have learned from them. You know, you learn things the hard way, and you really learn the hard way. You learn. You don't want to feel that. You don't want to feel that again. So, So the people about whom I'm speaking, if they happen to listen to this, I know that they will understand, and I hope that they hear that.
Yeah, don't be hating on Billy. He did the best he could. Hey, two more questions, man, and I appreciate your time. This has been really enjoyable. What are you looking forward to in the future, either musically, professionally, or personally?
I think I'm most looking forward to just seeing where I end up, honestly. I have a few different paths. I've always been extrapolate out. Where are you going to end up? And there's a few different possibilities. And so I may keep touring for a while. I may leave it and go open a restaurant somewhere. I would love to, honestly, you know what the real dream is to own a winery somewhere and make wine in Washington State or something like that. And embracing the idea that just because you've done one thing doesn't mean that will be the one thing that you continue to do.
Oh,
and
so God no.
Yeah. So I'm embracing, and not, don't hear this saying, well, I'm done playing music. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all.
No.
It's just, I think at 30, I'm embracing the idea that, like, there's many, many years left and many more things that I would like to do. And so having the opportunity to do those, and, you know, it's not about money for me. It's not about fame or fortune. It's about joy and fulfillment. And, I continue. I think an important thing is to keep learning and to keep educating yourself. And so, you know, I'm not a big fan of like TED Talks in particular because I don't really like the forum, but that kind of embracing your learning and embracing that as an adult, you still need to keep, you need to keep putting new information in. You can't just like stagnate. So I feel excited about that now. You know?
Good, man. A lot of rock guys own like Maynard. Mm-hmm. He owned from Tool, Maynard.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He owns a winery, I think.
Yep.
Last question. What's your definition of happiness?
Oh, man. The heavy hitting question. Happiness is being unencumbered by fear or regret or negativity. Happiness is embracing life and enjoying the process of embracing it.
Well, man, I think you're a pretty happy guy. And
I think so too, man. I think so too.
Appreciate your time. I appreciate getting to know you. I want to tell people where they can find you.
Sure thing.
First of all, it's Billy Norris. He's touring with Gavin DeGraw right now, so go see Gavin on tour and support those guys. They work hard. I know you have a big thing coming up at Summerfest in July, I think.
That's right, up in Milwaukee. Yeah.
Awesome. Check them out. And you can go to Gavin DeGraw's website to find out when they're touring. Billy also gives lessons, and I mean, no, not to blow smoke, but if I was looking to get lessons with a guy who's going to be motivating and understanding from the other side of the table, he's probably a pretty good guy to pick. And he does that through a site called LessonFace, LessonFace.com. And you can check out his playing on YouTube. There's tons of stuff of him there. It's Billy Norris again. And he's also on Instagram and Twitter at Billy_Norris. Did I get all that right?
You got it all right, man. That sounds good.
Hey, man, I really can't thank you enough for your time.
Absolutely, man. This is a blast. You were nice and gentle with me. I appreciate it.
So you'd be open to doing it again.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Let's do it.
All right. Hey, man, thank you again. Everybody.
Thanks again, Craig.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Thanks so much again to Billy Norris for spending time with us. Check him out on the road with Gavin DeGraw. I really appreciate it. Hope you all did too. Go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get notified about future episodes along with some early product announcements and discounts. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have some fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.